Hello and welcome to another episode of Detective Case
and Detective Close podcast.
We're your hosts. I'm Aaron Shirley.
And I'm Brian Townsend.
Today we have a special guest. It's probably the guest I'm most excited that we've had so far. Not to discount anybody else, but we have David Zach here from the group Remedy Drive. So well-known musician and international man of mystery. So I'll leave it to you, David. Maybe just tell us a little bit about like your music career and kind of like what you're doing on a day to day.
I have a rock and roll band, like you said, called Remedy Drive, and I've been doing that since I graduated high school. And in the last 12 years, we merged our rock and roll band with the counter-trafficking movement, and so we partner with our fan base and our community and organizations here in the United States and around the world to tear a corner off the darkness of human trafficking in whatever we can. And Daylight United is our band's organization, and that's how we fund the work that we do.
Okay. Wow. It's a lot. It's an interesting transition. Let's start with your music career. Always playing instruments, singing. What kind of led you into the whole, let's start a band?
I get to see Smashing Pumpkins at Lollapalooza this summer in Chicago. My sister gets us into the festival. Me and my kids, which Smashing Pumpkins is one of the bands from the 90s that my kids just won't enjoy. But for me, listening to them in the 90s, listening to other music, I fell in love with making music and believed in it and was impacted by it. And so I started my band with my brothers when I was in high school, and we got really fortunate. People started inviting us to play places, and then we had some songs that made it on the radio, which has allowed us to keep on having a career for coming up on 30 years now.
Wow. So at some point, you not transition, you're doing both, but now you figure out a way to, like you said, help folks through the human trafficking and the struggles. How does that even happen? Like, what made you get to that part?
I could talk about this part for 30 minutes at least. But to recap it, I think my story is similar to your story and similar to so many other people's stories that are listening. It's just that I had a rock and roll band. That was my way of participating in justice work. And I think all of us have moments in our lives where we think, man, I wish I could do what that person or that group is doing. And I just decided after moment of being confronted with that feeling, that tug at your heartstrings that everybody knows, it's familiar for anybody that hears this longing to participate in someone else's story is something that is innate in all of us. It's probably what pulled you both into law enforcement, because you believed that you could tear a corner off the darkness of different criminal activities and keep people safe. And I think we're all built that way. And so for me, hearing Dr. King's last speech the day before they shot him, hearing about Amy Carmichael, who would dye her skin with coffee and go into temples and rescue 6 and 7-year-olds from forced ritual prostitution. Like, that was when I was a little kid, I would hear those stories. Harriet Tubman, the abolitionist, Frederick Douglass, the abolitionist, a quote from a British abolitionist named William Wilberforce. He said, "You can choose to look the other way, but you can never again say you didn't know." And that quote in particular, like, just laid bare something inside of me. And I'm like, I can't do nothing. And so it was 14 years ago that I decided I'm going to do something that's going to seem really insignificant, and I'm going to celebrate that. And so I thought I'd write some songs. I guess a really important part of that progression was in 2012, my daughters and I watched a documentary about boy soldiers, which is a particularly evil kind of human trafficking where kids are kidnapped and forced to fight on the front lines of a war. And my daughter was only 5 years old at the time. She says, "Dad, why not God protect those boys?" And that was like, oh my gosh, like, what am I doing? Like, I have this successful music career. I have everything I ever dreamed and more. What am I going to do with it now? And so that was my progression to use rock and roll as it has been used throughout all since its inception to expose injustices. That's the best of what rock and roll has, in addition to just being great, it's brought that to the surface. So I get to be part of both the legacy of William Wilberforce and Frederick Douglass, but also of the musicians in the past that have said, don't we want a better world to live in? And so I get to use music to do that as well.
Wow. Surely that wasn't a smooth transition. I mean, it had to be kind of a rocky road, right? I mean, were you trying to, how were you figuring all that out and, what that big picture looked like? I mean, obviously you had the desire and, the heart to do it, but that journey, can you tell us about that journey?
That's a great question. No one's ever used the phrase that had. For me, I think the road's always been rocky. It's never been smooth. We had on the music side, we had to fight for everything that we built. And it wasn't because we're not, we never fit in with the music. And so I was used to not really fitting in. But I did go to the label and I said, hey, this boy soldier thing, like, look what's happening. Look what's happening. We're alive today. What can I do something about this? And he knew the content of what I wanted to write about when it comes to slavery, when it comes to human trafficking and sex trafficking in particular. And he still said to me, one of the guys from the record label said, David, I'm a whore and I need you to give me something I can sell. This stuff's not going to sell. Just give me something that, and in many ways he was right. But I responded internally. I'm like, I'm not that. I don't use that word. I'm not a commodity. That's what I said. And so I wrote that down and that became the lyric for the first song that we released was I'm a soul inside a body. I'm not a commodity. And so I was able to use my angst at the music industry, just like everybody has angst at their industry. That's what I realized is I'm not unique in the fact that this organization, this machine is taking advantage of me. And for me in particular, they're shrink wrapping these melodies and trying to reduce me to the lowest common denominator so that I'm more marketable. And so I used that angst to write lyric, combined with and overlapping with the stories that I was researching about people that are being enslaved and human trafficked. And so, no, it wasn't a smooth transition. It was really a terrible business decision in hindsight. Like I could have done better in terms of being a household name or having more people know who we are. I'm really thankful I didn't go that route. And this rocky road, as you say, has been really rewarding in so many ways that wouldn't have existed otherwise.
That was my biggest takeaway when me and you met last month. I was like, man, I like this guy. Like, I'm not just going to go along with something because I'm supposed to or because like I'm trying to profit off of it.
Yeah. And I might have overcorrected too much on that. My kids would say, you know what? I did wish dad would have kind of like profited more off of stuff. But they're
Right?
proud of me and we're figuring out a way to do, I don't believe that this kind of work is exclusive for the single guy that has nothing tying him down. If only those types of people are fighting human trafficking, then we've all lost. We need people that are family guys like myself. We need musicians. We need detectives. We need people with all different backgrounds. And so part of what excites me about our story is that I use my story as a musician to convince people that aren't musicians, aren't law enforcement, or maybe are law enforcement, that we all have a role to play. And each of our specific roles is going to look different. Just like Frederick Douglass's role in the abolition in our country was way different than Harriet Tubman's role. They had different roles and they both embraced what they brought to the table.
Wow.
We'll get to kind of like some of the stuff you've done internationally, but like, how do you get your wife on board with this, right? Like, or how do you get other people in your like circle on board with this?
Yeah, it was shocking to her.
Mm.
It was shocking to my band members, that's for sure. But I met a team, mainly an organization that was funding a lot of spies and a lot of investigators. And what I mean by that is people that go in pretending to be customers into areas where young teenage girls are being sold by the hour. And I met a team that was doing that, and they said, "Hey, can you help raise funds for us? Can you help raise awareness so that we can do this more effectively? Help us buy vehicles, help us buy equipment." And this is a non-government organization. And I said, I know that a lot of musicians talk about stuff like this, but how is somebody gonna I don't think anybody's gonna listen unless it's something that I'm actually part of. And that was just kind of how I felt at the time. And my wife, that evening, I told her, she's like, "How'd that meeting go?" I was like, "Well, I said I have to join if I'm gonna do this, and they invited me to come overseas." And she's like, "No way." Like,
Mm.
and so they came over for breakfast the next morning. And by the end of breakfast, my wife said through tears, "David's gonna join you. This will be our legacy."
Wow.
And I think there's a magnetism to this work that, from my experience, people wanna be involved. And if we can just move past that fear, um, whether it's fear for what it will do to our career, what it will do to our mental health, what it will do to our souls, once we were able to move past that, um, people are brave, people are courageous, and that's been my experience. People wanna help, and they just need a way to help, and we thankfully kinda stumbled on it. We didn't plan it. We stumbled into this.
Early on, so you need to be a part of it, not just be a voice of it, but be a part of it. How does that I don't wanna use Rocky Road again, but I mean, surely that's not smooth, right? I mean, how does that change your life? How does this all progress?
My brother Philip, um, knows me more than a lot of people. My younger brother started the band with me, and when I told him, he's like, "Man, that is just too dangerous." He's like, "You can't even maintain eye contact for 3 seconds.
Mm.
You're gonna stick out like a sore thumb. You're gonna, how are you gonna do undercover work?" Um, but he did come out with me a couple nights years later, and he's like, "Don't take this the wrong way, but you just are so comfortable in those places." Like, um, I just decided to just be myself, and, human traffickers like music, they like politics. They like everything that I like to talk about, and so I talk about the things I talk about with anybody. I love talking about politics. So, if I'm in the Philippines, I'm gonna ask like, "Hey, what's the deal with this Duterte guy, and his daughter?" Or wherever I am, I'm kinda poking the bear, and I don't mind offending the guy. He probably has different politics than me or likes different music than I like, but I just am who I am already, um, and I just maintain that persona when I'm trying to infiltrate a trafficking organization in the Philippines or Thailand or Colombia or wherever it is that I happen to be working. And I think also because I spent a lot of time, sometimes after a concert, we'll be at our table, talking to people and signing autographs for an hour, sometimes an hour and a half, depending on the event. And so I'm used to talking to people, and it gets really boring when people always ask the same questions. So I've learned to ask questions of like 15, 16-year-old kids, like, "Hey, what are you gonna do when you grow up?" Or what music do you listen to? And so I've developed that as part of who I am. And I'm able to leverage that side of my personality in a really natural way into these other very odd engagements. It's an autograph line is a very odd social environment.
Mm.
Um, I grew up doing door-to-door witnessing, like knocking on people's doors and trying to convert them, Like,
Mm.
that's an odd social interaction too, And as much as I'm like, "Oh, what was that part of my life about?" I'm glad for those experiences because it turned me into this person I am that I can, when I need to, I can be like, "I think this person owns this club, and they're selling 15-year-olds." And there's a part of me that'd be like, how do I even start a conversation with that person? But now I just walk up, and in the 15 seconds it takes to get to that guy before he leaves his establishment, I'm coming up with a question to ask him and to get into conversation with him. And so all the skill sets from music and from other areas of my life have helped me uh, have more of a smooth transition into this work that I do as well.
That makes sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Can you tell any stories?
Yeah, I have a lot of stories.
Maybe one that would, yeah, and whatever you choose.
Okay, so I'm in Asia, and I can make this easy so you don't have to bleep anything or edit anything.
Okay.
I won't cuss, and I also won't mention any city names or even
Yeah.
country names. So I'm in Asia, and there's a guy from somewhere in Europe that owns a club, and there's probably 40 women and girls in this club. Many of them are trafficked, and they have legal prostitution, a prostitution industry that was propped up by the fact there's so many American soldiers in that part of the world during the Vietnam War. And so we see, because of that demand, suddenly this thing, there's even a street in one of the cities near there called Soy Cowboy, which means Cowboy Street, named after the American veteran that started his company there on that street to exploit young girls in that region. And it's legal, but it's not legal. Like in the Philippines, once I had a guy tell me, what we do here is legal, but not legal. And I was like, explain that.
Hmm.
And I'm, I, I'm recording, and he's like, well, it's legal, but it's not legal. And I was like, I don't understand what that means. And so I'm playing dumb. And he's like, what we do here is human trafficking. He literally said that. And I
Wow.
said, what are you talking about? He's like, we sell the girls. We sell the girls. I was like, oh, okay. I guess that makes sense. So that's the kind of, like, he's a low level guy. And usually you're talking to lower level guys. But in this particular case, in the story I'm telling, this man that came into the club, it was very clear this guy owns the place. That was pretty evident pretty fast. And yet I'm sitting across the room. The idea is you're in there. There's ladies that are for sale, but there's also alcohol for sale. And sometimes the way that a woman can work off her debt, or a child can work off her debt, is through having you buy her a drink. And then she is supposed to get a couple dollars off that purchase that goes towards her debt. And that's debt bondage. It's classic human trafficking by definition. And that's what we're doing there. And we're trying to prove that there's minors there, because that's the most chance that we're going to get for law enforcement to make a move on this club is if we can prove there's minors. And so they're careful about that, because they are paying off all the cops. They don't want the heat coming down. And so they hide the minors, even though there's demand for minors, both in person and online. They're running both advertisements simultaneously. Here I'm in the club. The guy comes in, he's from Europe. Um, and I just go down, and I didn't know what to say. So I was like, wow, this is a nice club. Uh, uh, I just stand right next to him at the bar. And so he was really excited to give me a shot of some vodka, with vanilla infused vodka, that he had some recipe he had. So I had that with him. I cheers. I clinked glasses with him, talked about him. But eventually he, on video, is telling me, I was like, how do you, like, if I wanted to set up one of these places, what does it take? Well, first of all, you have to marry somebody, or at least have somebody that has 51% ownership of the place that's local, because as a foreigner, you can't own anything property wise. But then he's like, my biggest expense is paying off police. And he's like, you were in here an hour ago. If you looked right over there, there's 3 of the top cops from this region that I give freebies to, alcohol and ladies. And so that's the kind of environments I'm in. That's the kind of evidence I'm getting, because whoever those guys were, we're working with either the anti-human trafficking police on the local level, because there's local task force, or the federal level of whatever country I'm in. And we can help weed out that corruption. It doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes guys are smarter, but if you have a drink or two with them, and you look, my hair was down to my shoulders at that point in time, they're not thinking I'm working with law enforcement. So they say things they shouldn't say. And that's my job, is to get them to say things they shouldn't say.
It's a whole nother world. And one of our prior guests we had on, we were talking about human trafficking, and it's like, in the US, it's like we're blind to how evil people are, even, like, in our own country,
Yeah.
or how much of a demand there is for it, or the horrible things that people are doing to children in the US.
Yeah.
And he was saying just their task force, in one evening, they might have 7 guys because they're doing a reversal or they're doing a demand operation. So
Yeah.
they're, it's guys that are looking to have relations with children. And it's like you have 7 just one night in one small area of the US that are demanding this. It's crazy. And then what you're doing on an international level, I think it would just blow people's minds of how worse it even is overseas when you talk about like slavery and human trafficking and the things that are happening.
Yeah, and I get that question a lot, like, why not work in Missouri? Well, we do. Like, Daylight United funds work in Missouri, and we refer people and take referrals from people that need safe housing in Missouri or need out. Um, but the reality is the majority of these types of abusive materials that are consumed around the world of children being abused, the United States is the number one consumer of those products, even if they're made in the Philippines. And that makes me angry. That makes me sad. And so I do go to the Philippines and I do fund work in the Philippines because that's where it's happening. That's where the kids are getting abused. Not to say that there's not a ton going on here. From my experience in the United States, we work with the Safe House Project, and they have a network of 500 homes for survivors of sex trafficking specifically, but then they also have 3,000 homes because there's an overlap between homelessness, mental health, and other areas where people just need help outside of merely human trafficking. But if someone wants to make a report here in the States, we have simplyreport.com that is an AI questionnaire form that gets overlaid with a behavioral matrix that was set up by the guys that set up the behavioral matrix for identifying terrorism or radical extremism after 9/11. So that same group developed this software, which I'm really happy to get referrals to the Safe House Project because those referrals go to the correct law enforcement. That's the problem is people don't, you report it to a guy that writes tickets. I don't know your world as well, but a guy that writes tickets every day, like that's hopefully that's something he's trying to get up to be a detective or something. I only know it from the movies, but
Hmm.
what does that guy know what to do with that? Oh, there's human trafficking happening here. He's like, okay, no, there's a sex worker, there's a prostitute working here. That's what this is. But as we train law enforcement and as we get the tips to the correct law enforcement, so suddenly there's tips coming in from Joplin, Missouri, for example. Let's say there's a street corner or an area or a specific uh, house or a complex that people are suspicious of. When 2 or 3 people report a similar thing, those reports get combined by the AI tool and then put together and ranked on a level of viability because law enforcement in the United States is already weighed down. They go and do that sting operation like you're talking about, or set up a what do you call it, a
They
dem
like like demand operation or reversal.
yeah, and the backlog from what I've experienced with all my friends that are in law enforcement here in the States working with human trafficking is they're having to prioritize cases because they have so many cases. You know what I mean? There's
Yeah.
some cases that already exist and all the work to get those cases to go through and make sure that the traffickers get prosecuted. So that's my long answer is why do I go overseas? Well, I help how I can here in the United States, but there's overseas trafficking um, that I feel responsibility. I'm a citizen of the country that's the number one consumer of this stuff that's being created in the Philippines or Thailand.
So, so you started with, working with this company that already exists, and then you mentioned a nonprofit to help fund these operations. Is that something you run, or do you, through your music and through your other um, ventures, do you help, just raise money and pay for these operations, or how does that all come to play?
That's a great question. Daylight United is our band, Remedy Drives,
Mhm.
uh, nonprofit, our way of accepting donations from our fan base.
Okay.
And so our fan base has contributed millions of dollars over the last 12 years, and millions in in-kind donations too, um, towards funding specific raids and aftercare for survivors of trafficking. And so right now we have multiple teams. Some of them are inside of organizations that will give a grant to for specific raids. But then we have our own teams as well of investigators that we fund. And then we come alongside, like we were just in Illinois, and we came alongside an organization called Eden's Glory that helps with survivors coming out of trafficking. So at our events, uh, our songs are about this. We talk about it, and then we'll bring up on stage for several minutes someone that is working in the state that we're in with for that particular concert. And so that organization, we invited them to our concert, and they walked away with several grand and a bunch of people that wanted to volunteer for the organization, which is really beautiful. Like, because people after our concert, we tell these stories, and people are like, "Well, I don't have a band, so I can't do anything," or "I'm not a detective, so I can't do anything." But I take everything like that, and it's usually the voices in our heads that are the loudest. But all those voices are saying you can't do anything. I remove all those excuses, and I celebrate, like, just do something small. Give $20 to Eden's Glory or this organization in your state that's doing this great work, or volunteer for an hour a week with them. They need you. And so when ordinary people realize that organizations and teams need ordinary people, that's the biggest barrier to entry, I think. And that's what I love doing with the band, is convincing ordinary people that people doing justice work actually need their contribution. And then something clicks, and that's been really beautiful.
That's something I like that your organization does, and we talked about this last month, was your success rate with the aftercare and the wellness, like the mental health aspect, because that's what like law enforcement like doesn't do, or can't do, right? Like
Yeah.
we're really good at arresting people, but then like how do we make sure that like the victim doesn't fall back into that circle again, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And that comes with, that's not my expertise, and it shouldn't be. That needs to be women that have developed these programs, um, that understand what trauma informed therapy looks like. And I didn't go to school for that. I don't have that expertise, but I know the women that do. And so I mentioned to you last month specifically this amazing woman in Costa Rica from Renacer, which means to be born a second time, Renacer in Spanish. Um, and the government took notice of the fact that she has a 90% plus rate of success in terms of girls that are coming off the street. Because that's a disappointing statistic. The overall statistic is not what we'd want it to be of girls coming out of trafficking that end up going back to their traffickers or going back into that life. And so Renacer has a 90% plus success rate. And that takes really smart people and caring people. Agape International Missions, specifically in Cambodia, and they not only have training for all our band's T-shirts are made by survivors of human trafficking, and a lot of that happens in Cambodia. Um, and it gives them transitional employment. It helps a woman build her resume. If you've been trafficked since you're 13, what are you going to put on your resume? No one's going to accept your resume if you don't have a resume. So we help them build their resumes. And then Agape International in particular has partners all through the city that need employees. And these women and these girls coming out of their program, the graduates from the program, are not graduating as survivors of sex trafficking. They're graduating and entering the workforce in high demand. And that's what I've always like doing this work. And I don't know if you guys have experienced this with this particular kind of criminality or other kind of criminalities. If you could have some of the people that do some of this work, if you can give them something great to do, they're some of the most qualified people ever. You know what I mean by that? Like
Yeah.
they just happen to be selling the wrong thing, you know? And if you can harness that energy and that go-getter attitude towards making a difference in the world, like that's a really hopeful thing.
I'm curious to what outside of the horrific crime that's taken place, outside of that, what frustrates you? I mean, like I said, obviously that it's happening
Yeah.
frustrates us all, but what challenges, what frustrates you?
Hmm.
What do you what do you wish hurdles we could get over easier?
Yeah, the first frustration would be It's so hard to prove with human trafficking. It's so hard to prove. Sometimes it seems in very evident,
Yeah.
but like force, that side of it, yeah, if you can prove force, but then there's things adjacent to Stockholm syndrome. But human trafficking, when someone sells someone else and there's fraud or force or coercion, the fraud and the coercion is hard to prove. Um, and so that's frustrating because it seems like, well, if someone's kidnapping someone and selling them for sex, we should be able to identify that clearly. It's
Yeah.
not true. Uh, and then the widespread apathy. There's a lot of people that say they care, and a lot of us do care. And I think we just don't know what to do. So there's a lack of guidance on how do we fix this. But then at the same time, in some of the most high profile cases, like I'm thankful in Missouri. Yeah, I'll finish my sentence. In the high profile cases, I think people just roll their eyes and give up because it's like the corruption goes to the highest level and the
Right.
cover up goes to the highest level. In Missouri, there's a camp called Camp Cunnacuk, and a man that allowed hundreds of children to be abused by his employee and employees over the years. His name's Joe White. He's finally retiring, but he never got ousted. And people still send their kids to this camp in Missouri, one of the most successful and the biggest camp in the world, um, even though they know that they're not protected there. And this guy never took ownership. He has a bunch of victims and their families in NDAs, and one of the sisters of one of the victims got Trey's Law passed in Missouri specifically so that adults like Joe White, religious celebrities like Joe White, the owner of Camp Cunnacuk, what right does this man have to put a child in a non-disclosure agreement? A child that's been abused by one of Joe's employees that when Joe watched him get arrested in front of all the kids said this man still has work for the Lord to continue doing in his career. So that's sort of backwards, like protecting of powerful figures and celebrity figures and political figures and religious figures. The the gut response from a lot of us to protect those in power against these accusations is probably, I think, the most frustrating thing that I talk to my therapist about the most.
Yeah,
uh,
no, that makes sense. Yeah,
It's just a similar thing if you're familiar with the Institute for Basic Life Principles
no.
and the Gothard family. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
People.
I have people in my circle that read the Gothards and paid attention to them. That same thing, yeah.
and when politics gets involved, it's never a good thing because people blindly take sides regardless of what's right and wrong. And gosh,
Yeah, the combination of religion and politics.
yeah. Well, there you go. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
and I can pick on Christianity, and I think I have a response to because I love the teachings of Jesus Christ, like I really do. And so as someone that loves that, I feel a responsibility critique to critique men like Joe White. And I think there's a hesitance in us to do that because you can get canceled for that. You can sound like, you're supposed to cover it up like the rest of us. We helped expose something in the Christian music industry that was happening to young guys and gals. And the amount of pushback against that when it's, somebody that's had a positive impact on your life, well, they're still, capable of doing terrible things. And I'm not picking on one religion in particular because it's the 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 Buddhist leaders in Myanmar or Burma, that supported some of the genocidal tendencies of their current government, the junta that's going on there in Burma, which the human trafficking that happens through scam operations, which is something that you guys would I think would find fascinating, is the overlap between the scam compounds
Yeah.
and human trafficking, like right in that zone on that border, all the way up and down Thailand and Myanmar, but also Laos and Cambodia. There's facilities that have thousands in one facility, and there's hundreds of these facilities. There's 200,000 people enslaved on the borders of Thailand. And some of it's endorsed by religious and political authorities, that's frustrating. And it's frustrating that the masses don't rise up together, because if we rose up together and said, "We're not okay with this," we'd be able to have more of an impact.
Yeah,
So,
there's a
so I think people don't realize too, right? Whenever we say human trafficking, you automatically think prostitution, and you
Yeah,
don't realize there's still slavery, like real slavery happening
yeah,
in this world, right? Yeah.
yeah,
And you said there's compounds where people are still forced to work.
yeah,
yeah, there's another nonprofit, I was just watching a video of theirs on YouTube actually, and they showed one of the scam compounds. I mean, it looks like a city,
yeah,
right there on the Cambodia border there, and, and you talk about the money, and I don't know if this is a reason why people are complicit. It's not a good reason, but, they say that, they're bringing in more money than the GDPs of these countries. Well, okay, so what? Well, let's figure out
yeah.
a legal, moral way to make money, not human trafficking or not these other ventures, these other illegal ventures. So,
And when we do that, it shows that we're not okay with it, and when we don't,
yeah.
it shows like, there's something that's more important than someone's kid being sold and being forced and tortured to do this work that they don't wanna do. There's something more important than that. Um, and that's what frustrates me the most, is that there are things, and that's a decision we make individually in our families, in our communities, in our religious communities, in our cities. We make a decision to say, these are things we're gonna look the other way on, because you know what? Keeping the peace, unity, um, everything, this is political. Human trafficking is a political issue. There's no way around it. And there's certain people that have been really brilliant at turning it into a partisan political issue. But take the partisan side out, it's a political issue. That's what it is. It is. And it's okay. The idea of, well, I'm not going to read the headlines, or I'm going to bury my head in the sand, because the world is just, what a stupid way to live. What a
Selfish.
se- man. Yeah. I was looking for a great word. That's the right word. What a selfish way to live.
Yeah.
Like, but then I have to balance that, right? Because when I start doing this work, whatever energy I'm bringing right now, you can see that energy, right? You asked me what frustrates me, and I'm trying to back down on that now.
Mhm.
No.
But I'm bringing that into like a dinner party, right? I need to find the right place to bring it up. And also, like, I had a friend of mine that I really respect from a band called Switchfoot. I love John from Switchfoot. He's like, man, you got to figure out how to watch your bedside manner. Like, people are coming for a concert, and suddenly you're telling them about kids getting electrocuted in 50-gallon water tanks in Cambodia because they're not meeting their quota on scamming Americans out of cryptocurrency. He's like, and so there is a tact. There's a way to do it. Like your podcast, it's an appropriate outlet for this kind of angst. It just is, right? And how do I tone down some of this language a little bit? Maybe I've toned it down too much. I don't,
Mhm.
because I talk so, at the event that I was at with you, it's like I said, I got a quick PG version of what we do, and the guy that spoke on Sunday morning came up to me after. He was like, "That was really." I was talking to my wife. That's technically PG-12. Like,
It it's good, right? You have passion for it. We
yeah,
need more people that are passionate.
yeah. And I've had to harness that passion, and I don't want to alienate people.
Yeah. Do you travel a lot still or
With the band, I travel a lot,
yeah.
and then I speak at universities a lot about
Okay.
this, oftentimes to nursing students, which is cool, because 90, I think 89% of trafficking victims will experience a medical professional in that time period when they're being trafficked. And
Wow.
so nurses have a really great opportunity. There's all sorts of ways they can separate a victim from her trafficker: ultrasounds, testing, urine samples. There's all sorts of great ways where they can get them apart and ask them important questions that can help save their lives. And then overseas, I travel as much as I can to join teams. I don't want to stop doing this work because I can't just be another talking head. If I'm inviting people to risk their lives alongside of me, and so I want to keep on traveling as much as I can on to do investigations.
Wow.
Is there a time where you were like, "Uh-oh, I'm not making it out of this," right? Like, doing undercover work, you were talking to the worst criminals in some of the worst areas of the world.
Yeah.
Is there times where you're like, I don't think I'm gonna make it out of this establishment?"
There's been one time, and that was with the scam compound, because I was in Asia on top of a mountain. It took us 45 minutes to get up there. And the team I was with, I stayed out of the decision making process. They were on their 20s, and they're like, we need to, there's like at least 100 guards at this facility. And there's no way to describe it. This is a city they built to enslave people inside of. They have groceries, they have medicine, they have everything there for the mob bosses and the guards. And then they have enslaved people in there that are forced to make these calls. They have a casino, they have a brothel, they have a dance club. They got everything to meet the demands of a multi-thousand, probably 5,000 people that were either working for them or enslaved by them. And it's a Chinese mafia. And so we pretend to be interested in the casino. It's so weird. There's no way to describe it. It's on top of a mountain. There's some touristy things there. There's an old colonizers, the ruins of a colonizer church up on top of the mountain. There's some rock structures. We're pretending to be a business in case if they ask questions. And, we go into the casino. One of the guys gets lost in the casino, and, he gets lost. He's getting evidence of the fact that there's a bunch of people sleeping in tents on the 4th floor. And, but then we know that the main area where it's happening is about 2 miles from there. And we fly a drone over it, but only from a distance. And then the next day we go back up and they're like, we're going to fly the drone and ride a motorcycle through with a 360 camera at the same time. And I'm like, no, there's no way. Like, there's hundreds of guards, and there's 3 police checkpoints on the way down. I got that license plate of a Ferrari and an Aston Martin the day before. And then we saw those 2 cars get escorted by a 5 police car escort up the mountain the next day. I'm like, if they see a drone in the sky, they're going to stop every car coming down the mountain. I didn't have a majority of vote in that situation. We did it anyways. And so I'm in the lead car and we're going down. And my most stressful part, in addition to the checkpoints, was the fact that I'm like, it was sprinkling, which was nice for the drone that it was, we had some fog coverage up on top. But now on the way down, I'm like, do I turn the heat on or do I turn the AC on when the window is completely fogged out? Because there's monkeys that are about this tall running across the road that we're going to hit. And the guys behind us are on motorcycles. So that was the only time I was like, there's a potential for this to just not to work out for us.
Yeah.
And the fact that corruption in law enforcement is usually way more hidden than that. So I knew that if they're it's so clearly that the law enforcement was in cahoots with the mafia, it was obvious. So they weren't trying to hide anything. So I felt very exposed in that environment.
Yeah.
Where a lot of times when I'm in Colombia or the Philippines, I'm going in with undercover cops, which is a lot more safe for me, I think, that this guy next to me can make one text and a bunch of guys with long guns are going to come through the door, and scheme.
Yeah.
I like that better. My wife likes that better.
I'm sure. Wow. Wow. So if someone wants to donate, someone wants to learn more,
Yeah.
Where do they go?
So the band is called Remedy Drive, and our organization is Daylight United.
Each has a .com to it?
Each of them have a .com on there, daylightunited.com. And we're still building that out. We don't have our logo yet, but this graphic designer is building a logo for Daylight United, which I'm excited. I'm excited for the t-shirts to come out eventually, made by survivors of trafficking. So go to one of those sites and it seems insignificant what I'm doing. There's 50 million people enslaved.
Wow.
And we've helped rescue a few thousand. And $20 a month seems really insignificant. And yet we have a bunch of people that are doing that. And that's how we're able to afford to spend money on these raids and on these rescues that we spend money on. A bunch of people giving $20 a month. You got $5,000, that helps a lot too, but $20
Mm,
helps a ton. And so that's mainly where it's coming from.
wow. People should also check out
Great
your
work.
music too. You're a showman. Like you put on a good show.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
That was a great concert in Missouri. That was a fun night.
I know the kids really enjoyed it.
Yeah. One of them stole my scooter. They didn't realize it was mine and got it back. Put out a ransom on it during the concert.
Uh,
Wow. I really appreciate the work you're doing. I think it's wonderful, and I always, it's as cliche as it sounds, I always say, be the change you want to be in this world. And it's when I meet people that not just say things, but actually do things, because actions speak louder than words always.
Yeah.
It's always a privilege. So sincerely, thank you. And for the folks that are supporting you, thank them as well. Right. Or I thank them as well. You're doing important work. So
Yeah. That's cool that you thanked them, because I feel the same ways. Like, I'm so thankful for this community of people that care. And it's I view it as a real privilege, but also responsibility. Like, it's stressful. Like, man, is this investment going to count in the way the person that scrounged together? There's a kid giving $10 a month, right?
yeah.
And $10, like, how do I take that $10 and invest it in a way that's going to have the most possible impact? And it's a real privilege and an honor. So I like how you said, I don't know how the right way to say it. Like, thank you to this group of people. Like, I'm right there with you. I'm really thankful for them.
But you thank them through your work. So
Yeah.
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 All right.
Anything else? Closing thoughts?
I appreciate you guys. Like, thanks for your career over the years, but also for now, this podcast that you're using. Like, people might minimize the effectiveness or the purpose of a podcast. Like, just like Frederick Douglass had the North Star newspaper, this podcast, just like my music, this is what we have. This is the currency that we have. And I love it that you guys are using this currency to shine a light on justice. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Follow that
Awesome.
up.
I can't. That was a great ending. All
All right.
right.
I'll close this out then. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.